in an Italian family, it was tantamount to murder. I mean, they didn't make a distinction.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Silver and Sensational. You might know me from last season. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi, the producer of this show, and with me is the host of your show, Lois Mills.
Hello, everyone. It is I, the one and only Lois Mills, back welcoming you for another season of Silver and Sensational.
Oh, you are so sensational, Lois. And if you remember season 1, we had Tom, who was your co-host. And this season, I'm going to be your co-host. Now, I'm not Silver. I'm not sensational all the time.
Oh, I beg to differ with that.
Depending on your definition.
Most of the time.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not. We can get my boyfriend's opinion on that. But I am a huge fan of yours. And one of the things we wanted to do this season was really let you shine. And I think I'm the best person to help you do that. So I'm basically going to be the audience for you.
Well, and you represent a lot of the young women that I've had in my life and still have in my life and love having in my life. So maybe more of you will join the Silver and Sensational group.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things I learned from you and understood from you just intrinsically was that younger women flock to you to kind of go, how do I turn into you? How can I grow up to be you? And so,
right, just like me.
Well, or the cautionary tales. No, but you said that you love to mentor women. I find a lot of what you have gone through fascinating. I know our audience will. And on another level, I didn't even realize, I should have realized, you're just like all of my Italian aunts. Because I mean, I'm not even full Italian, but I was raised like I was. So
okay,
you really got the ball breaking down that I love, that I
down
envy.
pat.
So
stones. Stones is how they're referred to.
You're right. You break some stones. You're not afraid to break some stones, some geodes. So now Tom does not leave us with nothing. He has a note that he wants to share with everyone about how wonderful season 1 was. So I'm going to read that now. Tom said, I'm so excited to watch and listen to Lois as she takes the reins of Silver and Sensational. When Lois came to me a year ago and asked if I would help her start her journey into the world of podcasting videos, I couldn't say yes fast enough. I have been such a friend, fan, and champion of Lois and her sensational life. I knew that she would be a natural and that the world would love her stories, her wisdom, and most of all, her humor. And the success of Silver and Sensational proved me right. I now get to step back and watch Lois soar to new heights. Take flight, my friend.
The one and only, our Tom Burke, who has been the wind beneath my wings from a Bette Midler song. He has supported every single thing I've wanted to do with such generosity, never expecting anything in return, and I wouldn't be doing this today if it weren't for Tom.
He's one of those gifted people that sees what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And I call him a conduit. He sees what you're good with and knows how to plug you into the places. And that's how we know each other. He's been pivotal in my life as well, Lois, and has helped me change it several times over. And he's no slouch himself. So
no, he's got some good street creds. He certainly does. So
the season 1 of Silver and Sensational is available. There's still some really wonderful content. And this season, we're gonna get advice straight from, I was gonna say the horse's mouth, but that sounds really derogatory. We're gonna get the advice from our Lo. And so we thought the best way to kick off this new chapter was to get to know the Lo, which is actually my favorite phrase now, is getting to know the Lo. So we're just going to do a full but short version of Lois's life leading up to today. How's that sound, Lois?
Well, it sounds scary to me because it's really opening myself up
Sure.
to basically the world. But I think what I'm trying to do with giving you as much of my background as I can in a concise fashion is to really maybe find something in my life that you can relate to. And if there's any adversity that you've experienced and perhaps I've done as well, and I have been able to overcome it, it will encourage you to do so, and also to know that no matter what your beginnings are and where you are now, it's only where you want to be going that you need to be worrying about or thinking about, not worrying, but having a focus on. So with that, I begin my more than humble beginnings in Chicago some 70 plus years ago. Growing up in a poor neighborhood, except I didn't know I was poor because everybody around me was in the same boat. So there really wasn't anything to compare it to.
And there wasn't media in the same way, right? There wasn't media that saying, "Oh, you are poor," or "Here's what you need to do in order to," you know.
There were three TV channels, 2, 5, and 7. 9 came later, which was local, but and then eventually PBS on 11.
Oh my goodness!
Being very, very young, there were just 3. And as I say, my mother was a working mother, and I was a latchkey kid. And for any Chicagoan of a certain generation, you might remember a woman who had a program for children that came on at 9 a.m. Her name was Miss Francis. And so Miss Francis had 25 minutes of entertaining for children. And then at 9:25, she'd say, "Okay, children." I remember she didn't say children as children. It was something like, "Children, go get your mother." Well, since my mother wasn't there, I'd go into the bedroom and scream at my brother, "Get up, get up, get up, Richie, get up. Miss Francis wants mom and you're the mom. Get up, get up."
Oh my gosh.
Needless to say, my brother, who loved sleeping more than anything, never got up. But that was the beginning of learning what it's like to be a latchkey kid. And,
That must have caused so much anxiety too, right? Because you're being.
no, listen,
Am I wrong?
you know what? Again, you only know what you know.
Sure.
There isn't, it was the way things were. So at the time, I really didn't know of any other classmate whose mom worked. And so until I was until 3rd grade, I had lots of aunts and uncles that lived. I had 5 of them from the school to my house. So I went to the closest one after school and for lunch, because we did go home for lunch in those days. And then in 3rd grade, I started to go home myself for lunch and then make lunch and then go back to school and then go back home after school. Now, by today's standards, children's services would be called in for this.
Lois, we weren't even allowed to walk the half a block to our elementary school. Now, granted, this is also a product of too much news. My parents all of a sudden learning what it was like for kids walking down the street by themselves. So and we drove. My mom didn't even walk our asses there. So I can't even imagine trying to figure out cooking on a rainy day or whatever, tomato soup and grilled. I can't even fathom it.
I was just talking to a very dear friend today about the difference in kids today. She just dropped off her child to college. And difference is, even though maybe parents today are much more protective, they have more reason to be because there's a lot more danger than what existed when I was a kid. We didn't have, the kind, as you say, the news of people, and I was very aware of danger. I was a frightened little girl. I mean, I would go Friday nights, Friday after school at 4:00. I would wait for the bus to take me to dance class. And there was a factory across the street from from the bus stop. And I was just so frightened of the men that came out of there that I stuck a hat pin in the back of my shoe in case somebody came after me. And that was just the physical part of, being with a working mom.
Right.
The emotional and the other part of a mother who really probably shouldn't have been a mother was far more damaging. Now, I like to say I have succeeded in life because of my mother and in spite of her. So with that kind of background, you see, I learned self-sufficiency, resilience, and mainly, given what my life turned out to be, how to be alone. So I really have the ability, and have had for the better part of my life, those necessary survival skills to be a woman who does not need a man to take care of her or to give her a life. So I'm not sure if my early existence has much to do with the fact that I've spent most of my life alone, or if because of my early existence I have found it easier to spend most of my life alone.
Sure.
Haven't answered that question yet.
It also feels a little like a chicken and the egg because it is what happens, right?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. But that's a whole nother story. Little childhood things are a whole nother story, which, we'll get to hopefully sometime.
Yeah, I mean,
this
I'm already
season.
seeing the need for a mom episode because it's no surprise.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah.
Believe me, but it's no surprise. I mean, it's anybody with with decent eyesight could see didn't have what you needed in a mother, decided to give what you have to younger women. It's very interesting, that juxtaposition.
Yes, and also someone who knew me very well said, I basically raised myself, and I think I did. But as I said, that's not only a whole nother story. There's lots of stories from the beginning of time there, but my birthday is the end of summer, and I wanted financial independence because I hated having my mother hang over my head. No, you can't.
Especially because she wasn't doing enough for you as a, and then she has the audacity.
I altered my birth certificate.
Oh my God.
So that I could get, oh yeah. Well, it was easy in those days, a little.
You just use a number 2 pencil and erase it.
Actually, it was on papyrus.
You sure they didn't etch it into the wall?
It was scratched. Exactly. But so I got this summer job where all the girls got summer jobs in the neighborhood. And it was a factory that printed Christmas cards that they sold in these big books that you see in stationery stores where you go and order a Christmas card and says, from the family of.
Ah, yes.
Well, my first job was on an assembly line. Now, mind you, it is summer, it is hot. There is no air conditioning, obviously. And this conveyor belt runs along, and there's a pot of glue with 2 paintbrushes and you stuck it in and you smashed it on the card and the envelope and you placed it just so on the page, and then that book went down to the next person.
Wow.
Needless to say, this was big life lesson. You ain't ever going to have a job like this again in your life, so you better get your act together.
Imagine changing your birth certificate to get a big fancy job, and then this is the one you got. That's amazing.
Well, and then wait till you hear this. Now that I had money, I went to a parochial school. I had to pay for that year's tuition, and I had to pay for uniform, and I had to pay for books.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the fact that I worked all summer long to have some money, it all went to school. When I wanted to move to a public school, I said, listen, if I've got to pay for this, Ma, then I'll go to public school. Well, again, this was not, my household was not the kind of household in which you had a discussion with your mother of what you wanted, because what you wanted didn't make a damn bit of difference. So I went to parochial school that year, and that was, So the following year, I worked 2 jobs. The daytime, because after school, then I took a job working at the supermarket as a checker because I was union, and I could get $1.25 an hour instead of the 75 cents everybody else was getting. Yes. So during the day, I took a job in the summer as a secretary, and then I'd walk home in my high heels, have dinner, change into the red and white checked uniform, and then walk to get to the other job to check out until 9 o'clock at night, and then worked all day Saturday there. So I accumulated enough money to get a car and insurance. And then I went on I didn't have money to go away to school, so I went to a city school, but once again, Mother wanted her money. So of the $50 that I made, I needed to give her $35 room and board.
How old were you?
18.
Oh my God, Lois.
Oh yeah. And so,
I know other people have these kind of stories. I know they do.
Oh no, listen, this is just the way she was. I mean, this is the way she was. Because I had cousins who, my one cousin, brother and sister, he's 2 years older than me, and she was 2 years younger than me. They didn't have to do any of this stuff. These were my mother's issues.
And by that age,
and so
you kind of saw that no one else was going through this, right? Like at a certain point, there was a turning point.
Not then.
Yeah.
Not then. Yeah. I resented it. I resented the control, Mm-hmm. And of course I did what any stupid young woman would do. I found a way to get out. And that brings me to getting married.
Oh, I understand. I was going to say, well, no, getting out isn't that. I understand. Men rarely solve the problem, Lois.
Which I will discuss in detail as we go on, but suffice it to say that my marriages are not among my more successful stories of my life. 2.5 marriages.
Which I love that, and we are going to talk about that. I remember when we were recording the first season and you said 2.5, my jaw dropped, and yet it's that simple sentence that that's you in a nutshell. That sentence right there.
Well, the first marriage, boy, he was sort of handpicked by my mother to take over where she left off. And yeah.
Did we love him, or did we get forced onto him?
Let me put it this way. So, the night before marriage, we were having a rehearsal and a rehearsal dinner. And he was in night school. And he not only did not make it to the rehearsal, he never made it to the rehearsal dinner. So I remember sitting in my car telling my brother, I don't want to get married. And he said, no, you just got the last minute jitters. Everybody goes through this, it's just, And I could picture myself sitting next to him now and saying, no, you know what? This is a mistake. This isn't right. He said, you're really just having last minute jitters. And I just didn't understand why everybody else's boyfriend seemed to act like a boyfriend, and my boyfriend / fiance didn't. It turned out as a husband, he didn't either. So we got married, although I will tell you, I had a 10 o'clock mass. At 9:30, the bridesmaids had been picked up. My mother had left for the church. And I didn't have my dress on. I didn't have my veil on. And I was painting my nails. And I remember standing at the back of that church and saying to myself, you know what? If it doesn't work, I'll get a divorce.
Wow. Which no one was talking about then. I mean, there were two people you knew that got divorced, and everyone had an opinion about that at the time. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you may as well. I mean, it was in an Italian family, it was tantamount to murder. I mean, they didn't make a distinction.
Oh my God.
Anyway, we married, and he then decided he wanted to go back to school full time. And at the very same time, I was given an opportunity to either get a job working for the now defunct Eastern Airlines, where a perk would be travel, which, of course, at that time, if you don't have money, a perk of travel isn't very interesting, or the automobile business, in which I would get a car, and that really made a difference. So I took on doing that, and it ended up where, I worked like 12 hours a day, an hour back and forth to work, because I had literally no money. There was a faster way to go, but the tollway was 35 cents. I didn't have 70 cents. 70 cents made a big deal, and I'd get home after working 12 hours, and there he'd be sleeping on the fucking sofa. And, dishes from the day piled up, rata. So, I mean, it just really wasn't
a partnership. It wasn't.
God, no, this was absolutely no partnership whatsoever.
Right.
And I hung in there, and then my first major traumatic event in my life took place, and that is my father got cancer the second time, and this time it was pancreatic, and it was terminal. And
Wow.
I remember this is a quick little story. My husband, by this time, had finished school, and he was working as a CPA, and he was traveling. And he would go out of town, and he wouldn't bother to call just what time to pick him up at the
my
airport.
God.
And so I remember he was in Dallas. He was gone for 5 days, and he called on Thursday night and said, pick me up at such and such time. And I remember saying to him, yes, I'll be there because I want to talk with you. Now, I don't know what it is. I take a lot of, I don't anymore, but used to take a lot of crap in my life. And then when I had enough, I never screamed, I never yelled. I did that while I was taking the crap. When I had enough, it was something in my tone of voice that made that person know they overstepped it. And so there he is. He arrived. When I picked him up, there he was with a album. And I thought, what the hell is this? And he got in my car. And he was sitting and I was driving. And I remember saying, so seriously, my dad is dying. And I want him to die knowing that his daughter is taken care of. And so you will live with me and act like a dutiful husband until the day Daddy is put in the ground. At the moment that casket is at the cemetery, you will get out of my life.
Holy shit.
And that was in January. My father died the end of June. The funeral came. We were at the graveside. I was the last one to leave. Carrie was there. Started to walk to go to the luncheon. He grabbed my arm. I looked at him, took his hand off my arm, and said to him, I told you 6 months ago, you are not to come with me now. You will go home. You will pack your bags. And when I get there in 2 hours, you will be gone. This is after I put him through school. I got repaid by his stealing money from me,
Oh my God.
his continuing cheating on me,
Oh, Lois.
and his being physically abusive. And that was the end. Not the anything, but the fact that my father died. I felt he was the only person that loved me. I didn't have to worry that he would be upset with me, disappointed in me, or worse than that, he would die thinking that I was by myself and I could be free of that. So that's it. My dad's passing gave me the courage to leave that marriage. So marriage number 2. We met, making a long story short, after my dad died, I was too emotionally upset to keep my job in the automobile business, too much responsibility. So I took a job in a local shop. It had a pool table and a men's store and a women's store. And so I worked in the ladies' store. I stopped for a while. When I came back, these 2 wonderful women, true Jewish mothers, said, we'd love you back in our department, but you'll never meet anyone here. We want you to go in the men's department where you'll meet somebody. And that's how I met husband number 2,
Holy moly.
Yes, of which I was his wife number 3. He left number 1 for a very glamorous number 2, and number 2 left him for a very glamorous husband. And 4, I really had a good life. Now here was a marriage of good partners. We were really good partners. Perhaps not a fabulously passionate
Right. But practical.
relationship, but there was a regard and respect for one another. He had, again, he had a lot of baggage, ex-wives, children, alimony, elderly parents, It was a lot of baggage. I didn't have kids. My ex-husband was completely out of the picture. My family never got involved in any of my stuff. But anyway, it went on. We lived together 3 years. We were married for 10. So after 13 years, we've moved into this wonderful, beautiful apartment on top of Neiman Marcus in Chicago. And he, at this time, I wasn't working. And so when he would go to work in the morning, he would leave these little Post-its with the smiley face and I love you. And
how sweet.
Yeah. And that one night he came home after doing this and he said, I want a divorce.
Lois, no. That's a Sex and the City episode, basically. Oh, my God.
No kidding. I said, what? Now, no separation. No, we should seek counseling. None of this. He said, no, I want to pursue a more meaningful relationship. That is a quote that has never left my mind. So I had suspected, women know, you really know girls,
yeah.
It was about 3 months that I felt, something was happening. So I said to him, you really find somebody you've been seeing for a few months being a more substantial relationship? He said, yes. I said, do you really? He said, yes. I said, well, do you think you're going to be happy? He said, yes. I said, you know what? Go. Now, for all of you out there that think that this was a cavalier statement on my part, it wasn't. I was in the fetal position for 5 years after that. But let me tell you the reason why I said go is because I know once a person wants out, whether it's a job or a relationship, and they express this to you, listen to what they're saying, because they're only going to do it again. And I simply could not live with waiting for that other shoe to drop.
No, I think that makes sense.
That was shocking, but I'll tell you, what stayed with me was when he said, I haven't loved you for 5 years.
Oh, my God.
I think that hit me more than anything, because for 4 years and 9 months, I was clueless. And all these years later, and it is almost the 35th anniversary of his walking out, I kind of wonder if it just wasn't his way of being hurtful. And
sure,
if that was the case, why get involved in building, an elaborate apartment?
No, I think you're right that, you know what? It makes me wonder, you saying go doesn't make him go, well, what the hell?
Well, I think he expected, my carrying on, and I did carry on. I really did carry on. I couldn't stop crying. And as I said, I was in the fetal position.
Right.
I was numb. I was, and I really, I kind of stayed that way for a number of years.
Well, and this was Lois, right? So you told this story before you were replaced by an older,
this was
less attractive Lois.
I was exactly. So I gave him all of the monogram linens and said, Godspeed, nothing changes for you. In your heat of passion, if you scream Lois, she's never going to think it's your ex-wife.
I couldn't even stomach being her. Let's just put it that way. And that's kind of what we're doing here today, is just getting all of this Lois lore so that when we dive deeper into what people are looking for and the advice they're looking for, when they're like, well, how did you survive 5 years? And what was it like when you went to go get that eggplant parmesan? No, it was what was it? A roast? Was it what did you have that? Oh, meatloaf. Your meatloaf. We have a great meatloaf store.
Meatloaf. Yeah.
That anyone can relate to. And man, it's just fascinating. So Lois, he downgrades to a different Lois, the older Lois model.
Downgrades a different Lois. And so now I, at this time, was able to pursue an incredible career. And I'll just finish up by saying some 14 years later, I woke up one morning and said, I don't want to be alone anymore. So I did with, you'll excuse me, gentlemen, for saying this, but most of you do this. Whoever was there at the moment is who I took. And that is my half. I never married him. I found my mother in drag. I will talk about him at another time, but he really did a number on me. And,
Wow.
but there was an upside to having met him and experiences I would have never had. But, and you know what? Somebody once told me, it was like no other relationship I've had, and that part is true. So, saying all of that, I'll just quickly move on. Although there was nothing quick about those stories.
No, I actually the mother in drag. I can't wait till we get to talk about that. Holy shit!
But truthfully, so next, a bit of my career. I think I mentioned earlier that I was in the automobile business, and I work. I'm a good worker, and I went from being an office manager to a business manager who pretty much takes care of financing in dealerships, and then I became the first general manager for a Cadillac dealership. Female is the important
Yes, first
general manager for a Cadillac dealership in the country.
Yeah.
So that was pretty major, and God, crazy things happened there. What great fun, great friends that were made, but things were so crazy that eventually the dealership closed, and I was married to my second husband at the time. So I had a few coins saved, and I said, I really would like to open up. I'd always had a great interest in China and crystal, and I wanted to open up a fine China crystal shop, which I did on the North Shore of Chicago. And at a time when people weren't really doing tablescapes, nor were they mixing and matching dinnerware. And it was such a beautiful store, and I was able to really be the creative soul that I have always been but couldn't afford to be.
Right.
So I've financially afford to be because, unfortunately, artists don't make a lot of money. And so, so I was able to exercise this creative freedom, and it didn't go unrecognized. Because I did do a lot of shopping in Europe. The European manufacturers would come in for various shows and seminars in Chicago, and they would always come to visit my shop.
Wow.
And, they'd sit and pick my brains. And, about a year and a half later, if I suggested doing a black band with gold, one of them, there'd be a black band with gold. So I have to tell you, it was to a point where I thought, something's not right with this. And during this time, I've always loved fashion. Oh, and it was known as a fashionista. So I designed and manufactured a very casual knitwear line that just ran out of my store. I mean, we did things like just put up a curtain and women were changing in the middle of the store.
my God.
I mean, it was unbelievable. We had so much fun, and I had the most wonderful women working there. They were my family basically, but the truth be told, I don't have a retail personality. And so I decided, I can't take the pettiness of this. You really need a very people-loving retail personality to do this day in and day out, and I didn't have that. So I thought, why not sell and become a consultant with dinnerware manufacturers, which is what I did.
Wow.
And so started to do that with some of the people that, had known me as a retailer. And then eventually I opened up a studio and I designed and licensed and worked as a color consultant, design and license mainly dinnerware, everything for the kitchen and dining room. And I did that for over 20 years. And I worked mainly with the mass merchandisers in those days, Kmart, Target, Walmart, and then...
So you were like Kathy
I really
Ireland
lost-
without the name, basically.
Yes. There was a time that I also competed with Martha Stewart for the Kmart business.
Wow.
So it was a different, those were different times. And then I got a taste of working in the European market, which, this was exactly what I loved, because by the time I had been doing this for a number of years, 14, 15 years, the whole marketplace had changed, and it was no longer how great something looked, but how much was it selling for, which was out of my hands because I didn't set the price. So I had the opportunity to work with European manufacturers and distributors, Selfridges, IKEA, and it was just great. And then a client of mine got the opportunity to came to me and said, I don't have the time to start this up, but I will take a licensing agreement with the Picasso estate if you would agree to get it going. So this to me was, more than a dream come true. As a 16-year-old girl, I used to take the L down to the Art Institute.
Oh my goodness.
To look at the Picassos. I can still remember buying a poster I had in my bedroom of, the man in the blue guitar. And here I was, are you kidding? It didn't take me 2 seconds. And he didn't know it, but I'd have done it for nothing.
Jeez.
So at this point, I pulled out my two mentors. One mentor lived in Palm Springs and the other one in New York. And I called him and said, I want you to come out of retirement to help me get this started. And they did. And so that was the beginning of 4 years of my working with the Picasso estate and Claude Picasso. And to my great sadness, I saw 4 months ago Claude step down from the governing agency for making sure that artists got licensing and their works were not be used. It was the same as recording artists have their copyright. And he stepped down and Paloma became the head. And just a couple of days ago, I read Claude passed away.
Wow.
And I have felt so bad, just so bad, because it was a time of my life that I really, I had the...
You're lighting up
I was
just
in
talking
Europe
about
all
it.
the time.
I can just see.
Oh, it was, I worked in Paris, I worked in Milan, I worked in Deruta, Italy. This was very exciting for that little girl who sat on the stoop in a poor neighborhood, this was just, this was incredible stuff happening. So anyway, it turned out that my client then wanted to take the business over. So I gave that to him, and my other business that was still getting royalties from all the merchandise that was out in the world, I sold that and picked up and moved to Palm Beach, Florida. And that's a whole nother story.
Oh my gosh. I'm loving this.
So that was 3 years and of can't really say it wasn't, I met a lot of people, but the person I talked about, that half person,
Yes.
I met him. Through him, I met a man who was very influential in Los Angeles, and I said, gee, that's where I wanted to move. He said, do you have a realtor? I said no. He put me in touch with Beverly Sassoon, and the next thing I know, I was looking at houses in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So
Wow.
half followed me out to Los Angeles.
We don't even deign to say his name. I love this.
Now, the time that I spent with half was pretty traumatic for me, but the upside is I met the most fabulous people, and I did things with people I would have, presidents, like of the United States, POTUS's. POTUS and Company.
POTI.
POTI, that's right. POTI. And I had, I joined Bel Air Country Club, one of 12 female members.
Oh my God.
And if I tell you, of 540 members, if I tell you, never did I have so much fun being one of the guys and hobnobbing with celebrities that were like buddies to me. And this is all stuff that,
But that's Italian, though, too. I think.
How does shit like this happen?
Right place, right time. I can't wait to get into it.
Exactly. And then I was able to build my dream house on a street in Los Angeles. That the first time I was in Los Angeles, I stayed at the Bel Air Hotel. And I walked out the following morning, started walking up the street and said, oh my God, would I love to look at these trees, look at these houses.
I love this.
Wouldn't this be a fabulous place to live? You can't believe that some 30 odd years later, I bought a house that was a little shitbox falling down, and I built my dream house, my French country
Oh my God.
farmhouse,
Oh my goodness.
and had my 2 Jack Russells. Now, from during that time, which brings us up to the last 20-some years, I experienced 7 losses in 7 years. Just the closest people in my life to me, one after another. And then I had a massive heart attack. So it kind of came
Boom, boom, boom.
full circle, boom, boom, boom. And during that time in LA, I worked a bit as a, interior designer and, just trying to keep my fingers in things and supporting mentees. And I did goldsmithing and still do, actually.
Oh, wow.
It's an online business called Lois Mills ! Or shoploismills.com. And in supporting one of my lovely mentees, who is a delightful young woman who came to me as my nurse after my heart attack. Very talented, smart young woman, wanted to be an esthetician, did that, and then found her talent in doing tattooing, makeup tattooing. And I said, well, I'll go to school with you. So I did, and I opened up a permanent makeup salon doing tattoos. Have eyebrows, but actually I didn't want to, I just wanted to be able to give back. So we became licensed medically so that I could tattoo nipples for cancer patients.
my
Oh, yes.
God.
Then, I always wanted to do dabble in some kind of acting, and then I went to an acting school, and the woman that owned it said, I want you to meet somebody, and that's how I met our Tom. And through Tom's influence, I was able to get a job.
Wow.
And it's a fun commercial and it was a national commercial,
We'll be
and
sure
I've
to
done
share
some
it
other
on our
stuff.
social media.
Yes,
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
and then it's so funny. You'll love it. I'm a 90 or 80 something or 90 something year old woman marrying a 28-year-old.
love it.
So I'm in all this. It's fun. And so with Tom's wonderful support, I've written some stories, and now it's come full circle to Silver and Sensational. So here we are. I hope I haven't bored you with all this stuff. And
I think you've titillated us too much. I think that's the problem. If you weren't sold on this being a viable podcast, just listening to all that and knowing how much we have to talk about, it is.
I've had a wonderful life. I mean, I've had ups and downs, of course, like anyone, but as a little girl going to the movies, watching Doris Day and Rock Hudson and saying, I want to live like that, I have. And I've done pretty much everything I've wanted to do. And I want to share, if I can, share whatever I can in encouraging women and of all ages to enjoy your life fully and not be dependent on husbands or children to make your life a fulfilling life. So there you have it.
I think that's right.
Lois the lecturer.
There's many different Lows to get to know. I think this whole season is going to be full of so much of what we talked about. I'm looking forward to learning more about your mom, how you coped with loss, changing careers. You skipped over the most interesting part of and then I just decided I'll do designing. No one has that skill to be shifting careers. So I think we're going to definitely focus on some of those things. And you're right. This is a podcast for all ages that are looking to handle the transitions and the difficulties in our life with a little bit of humor and a little bit of fuck you attitude. And that's Lois's MO, I think, right? So thank you so much for listening. We've got a full season of this. And
will you remind everyone, Jessica, that this season I am welcoming questions from our viewers.
We want it.
And listeners.
We want it, especially based off of, if you want a little bit more detail on something Lois has already talked about, or if you're like, you know what, my half was a piece of shit, or I can't get rid of him, and you want that kind of advice, there's so many different ways you can get a hold of us. The best one is just by emailing us at silverandsensational@gmail.com, but we're also on Facebook, and we're on Instagram at silverandsensational, and we do need you to review, subscribe, do whatever you need to do on whatever platform you're listening to or watching us on. But most importantly, share this with a friend. Just like Lois, she wants to share with you what she's got in her brain. She wants to make your life better. And I know that that just by sharing this with one friend that you know would enjoy hearing this, that's going to help us a huge amount as well. And speaking of friends, Lois, what's next week's episode about?
Next week we're going to talk about making new friends. So please give us a quick email with a question.
silverandsensational@gmail.com. That couldn't be easier.
Perfect. Okay, so do that. It's on making new friends. So if you suddenly find your life different, you're widowed, you're divorced, you've moved to a new area, or you're just sick of the people that you've had in your life and realize, hell, I need some new friends. Send us your questions, because I've moved and had to learn how to find new friends, and I got some stories about what to be careful about.
I am so looking forward to that.
You will love to hear what happened. Anyway, everyone, I can't wait to talk to you again. Please stay tuned. Tell your friends. If you like what you're seeing, hit the like button. Subscribe, please subscribe, share, and I look forward to seeing you again in a week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Lois. Thanks so much.
Bye, Jessica. Thank you.